to the Direct Response and Social Media Marketing Podcast for bootstrapping entrepreneurs. Utile here with Aaron and
Hinde, Life Aid Beverage.
Here we are. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Yeah, we have a good friend of mine on today, Mr. Kevin Donahue. Kevin has, he's one of the most connected individuals that I know. Great entrepreneur, marketer, networker, has some just fascinating stories and just a great base of knowledge. I actually met him originally at a 25K meeting, the Genius Mastermind meeting with Joe Polish out there in Arizona, who Kevin was working with Joe and still is, but worked with him quite a bit for a couple years. So Kev, why don't you give us a little intro about yourself and little 1 minute blurb there on what you're all about.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, and you guys are awesome. People, what you said, I'm a connector, but really, I think the skill set that I've developed over the years is understanding language and understanding how to use powerful language to create stories, and stories that raise prices, and stories that compel people to engage with us, no matter what it is, whether it's in the world of selling software, mastermind groups, high-end products. It doesn't really matter. It's having the ability to tell a compelling story and then being invitational to invite people in. And so, the difference between marketing and selling is marketing is everything you do to get the customer on the phone or engaged. Selling is what you do when the person is on the phone or is engaged with you, either face-to-face or on the phone with you. So I have a company called Executive Sales Source, where I help entrepreneurs create sales funnels and raise prices. And I also am partner in a business called Ingenuity Group, where we launch supplements and skincare products online.
Great, and I've always enjoyed your stories. You on Necker Island playing tennis with Richard Branson, and appreciate you getting some of those photos sent over to me when we had first met and that type of thing, when we had some Life Aid products on the island as well.
Yeah, well, I tell you, those things were literal lifesavers for me. Both the Party Aid and the Fit Aid kept me going throughout that whole entire trip. I think we were down there for about 7 days with some really cool entrepreneurs. So yeah, I think I snapped a photo of Richard in one of our mastermind meetings with the Party Aid beverage sitting in front of him. I think that'd be good marketing for you guys.
Yeah, cool. We appreciate that. Always. So listen, Kev. I mean, you and I have had extensive talks. We've roomed up together at events before, and I know that you've got this just expansive knowledge base that you can share. I mean, this podcast is all about bootstrapping entrepreneurs. And so if you imagine you're a young guy sitting at home and you've got a business going and you're trying to decide on a price point, and and say it's an information product or even a hard good product. I mean, why don't you walk us through how do you assess or analyze price points, the advantages of pricing things high versus low or vice versa, and what's some of the psychology around that?
That's great. It's a mixture of both psychology and sociology. And the best example I could give as far as price goes is if in how we use language to increase price or to get the right price is if I say Ferrari and I say Honda. Honda and Ferrari, they're both cars, they both have 4 wheels, they have a steering wheel, they both burn gasoline. But when I say Ferrari, in your mind, 90% of your audience, maybe 95%, sees a red Ferrari. They see the color red. And then they also see a new Ferrari. Like when I say Ferrari, you don't picture a used car. Now, when I say Honda, the image you have in your head is typically a 4-door sedan that's gray, black, or blue, and it's used. So, understanding how to use language powerfully based on psychology and sociology actually create higher prices. So, as I say Honda or Ferrari, you're going to put yourself as a buyer in one of those categories. You're going to exclude yourself from one, and you're going to put yourself in the other. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of people are going to put themselves in the category of Honda buyer. That's just the way the vast majority of people are. So how do you create an exclusivity?
I was picturing myself with the top down in that red Ferrari, brother.
What's that?
I was picturing myself with the top down in that red Ferrari.
Exactly. So you're in the probably, you're the 1%, right? You're in the 5%. So, that's what you want to do. So now if you were the owner of a Ferrari and a Honda, and you happen to have a one-car garage, which car are you parking in the garage? In other words, which one are you taking care of more? And if you're selling Ferraris and you're selling Hondas, if you go into the Ferrari dealership and ask for $1,000 off or a couple $1,000s off, what are they going to do?
Probably laugh.
They're going to kick you out of the dealership. They're going to laugh at you and say, so what happens is when you enter into that higher price category, you start dealing with a different type of consumer. Someone who's not only willing to spend that kind of money, but also has a pride around spending that kind of money. So for an entrepreneur who's just starting out, what I would say is really understand your value. And the first thing and the most important thing in any business, the only thing that matters in business is selling. So I recently coached a young lady. She's a CPA. She has a specialty in forensic accountants. She's worked for the big accountancy firms like Grant Thornton and Ernst & Young. And she decided to go out and start her own business, her own management consulting business. And I told her, for the first 3 months of your business, you're no longer a CPA. You're a salesperson. So you have to get out every day, have 5 appointments, have your calendar booked with appointments. They could be phone calls, they could be lunches, they could be network meetings. But no matter what, about what you're up to. What that is doing is it's testing the marketplace. Because you might not know exactly the conversation you're getting into. So in this case, maybe you're a personal trainer, or maybe you're starting a fitness business. Well, the best thing you could do is go out in the marketplace and start talking to people. And then what you'll do is you'll start to be able to create your story so that you can start selling. And as you sell, you'll build confidence. And through that confidence, you'll raise prices. And so really the only difference between asking for $1 and $10,000 is just your willingness to ask for it. What's the difference? I mean, it's going to be a yes or a no. Right? So as soon as you raise your prices and as soon as you close one deal, then you're going to have the confidence that you can do it.
Right.
So, it's really a numbers game. It's getting out in front of as many people as possible and speaking to them. Or creating a funnel online, whether it's a, Facebook advertising, or whether it's a list advertising, whether it's a, it's getting people into your funnel and then having a conversation with them.
Right.
What are their pain points? What do they want? What do they want to accomplish?
Right. And filling that need.
And filling that need. Yeah, and having confidence and the ability to build rapport with your clients is very, very important. So, when you're going into the marketplace, if you're confident about what you're doing, if you know you're the best in the business, it's not too hard to be able to have conversations with people and ask for the big bucks.
Right.
In my experience, anyway.
Can you state the obvious for us, for maybe some of our listeners at home? Why did you make the comment that selling is really the only thing that matters?
Well, I don't care what business you're in, whether you're selling cars or you're selling software or you're selling, skincare products. The business you're really in is the arithmetic business. It's the numbers that matter. The biggest challenge for most people, and I think you've experienced this, Aaron, you could be the best chiropractor in the world. You could be the best musician in the world, but you have to have the numbers. You have to have the sales in order to stay in business. If the math adds up, you're in business. If it doesn't, you're out of business. It's as simple as that. And the one way that you can make a difference in your own business is by selling. Funny story. I met with some VC guys yesterday here in Newport Beach. I had lunch with them. And, it's amazing. Like, you don't need venture capital, right? Like, all you need to do is go sell.
Right.
Like, if you're trying to raise $100,000, well, go sell 20 people on a $5,000 offering, and there's your $100,000.
Or sell one on 100,000, right?
So yeah, exactly. Sell one at 100,000. Or sell 100,000 at one, right? So you can raise your capital by selling. As a matter of fact, you told me a story yesterday where they were about to fund a CEO in a new venture, entrepreneur. I can't wait to get funding so I don't have to worry about revenue anymore.
Wow. Wow.
And the guy, they instantly pulled the money. Like, the guy did not get that the only thing that we're in business to do is to sell. And so I'll tell you another story. I worked for a guy named Charles Wong at Computer Associates years ago. It's a very big software company. And Charles is the very first billionaire that I met. And Charles said, at the time, Computer Associates, or CA I think it's called now, had 10,000 employees. And he said there's two types of people here at Computer Associates. Salespeople and people who support salespeople. Charles got that without selling, there was no business. And he would always say, this is the most important quarter, this is the most important month of the most important quarter of the most important year in our business history. We have to hit our sales numbers. So at an early age in my career, I understood the importance of selling. And so we have to have the systems in place that create the sales. And there's different mechanisms. You can put automated mechanisms in place. You know, you get all these different online marketing systems in place to help you fill your funnel. But really, I mean, if you're selling the high ticket items, it's a conversation.
Right.
I mean, I say anything over 25,000 is a conversation in most cases.
Yeah, and you know, coming back to the emphasis on marketing and selling, you know, a lot of people, especially quote unquote professionals, professional practices, service type industries. It's interesting. There's a natural resistance, I think, to, you know, marketing and selling. Like that's beneath me type of attitude. And I think I heard, maybe it was Joe or you or somebody said it at one point in time, like, you know, imagine you're a doctor and you hold the cure for cancer, and you can cure any type of cancer. You figured it out, right? Yet if nobody knows about that cure and you don't have a mechanism, a systematic means to get that out to the masses, who does that cure do any good for? Nobody. If your product or service, as Kevin said, is that good, then you have an obligation to get that out there.
Yeah, it's true. It's a moral obligation. And all you're doing, really selling, is just being invitational, right? So if you've got a party coming up and you want, you know, all your friends to be there to celebrate, you have a wedding coming up, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to invite people. You know, like, you're not tied to the outcome, whether that's for them to decide. But, you know, I always call myself an evangelical invitationalist. I find the coolest stuff in the world, whether it's mine or other people's, and I go out and I invite people. You know, and so I just become like a spokesperson. So really all you're doing as a salesperson is, here's how I explain it. I paint a future so big and so amazing for someone. Yeah. And then I invite them to participate in that bigger future with me, right? Because I have the right solution that gets them there. So whenever I'm doing a sales call, or even just a meeting, is I want to touch, move, and inspire that person. Like, I want that person, that meeting and that conversation with me to be the best meeting they've had that day, that week, that month.
That's right.
And I also want to leave them haunted with a decision. Meaning that the story in the future I told them was so compelling that they, by saying no or by not making a decision, they're haunted. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out on something. Right? So if we can understand, like, we're not trying to convince anyone of anything. Ever. Like, I never try to convince someone. So this is where the hang-ups around selling. It's like, I don't want to go out there and convince people to buy stuff from me. Well, don't do that. Just be compelling. Like, be a compelling figure. Be a compelling invitationalist.
Can you give us an example of the difference between the approach in convincing versus compelling?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So convincing is me trying to persuade you to do things for my reasons. Right? Like, I want you to do this because it's good for me. Compelling would be you're doing it for your reasons. Right? I've put the entire decision into your mind and into your hands. And you're just compelled to say yes or no. And the beautiful thing is when you're not tied to an outcome. Right? Like, you're okay with a yes or a no. But you know that you've told the right compelling story to get them to enroll themselves into their bigger future. But when I'm trying to convince you, it's for my reasons. When I'm compelling you, it's your reasons.
It's like getting pulled in versus pushing in type of
thing. Exactly right.
This is Ian. That's a really great way of wording it. I've always worded a similar type of thing, saying there's this muscle that I call manipulation, the ability to manipulate people's emotions as a salesperson. And that if you try to get them to do what's best for you, regardless of what's best for them, you're deceiving them. And if you're trying to get them to do what's best for them, and you're bringing them into the future that's best for them, regardless of what's good for you, you're giving them the best opportunity. You're persuading them. But I really like the way you use persuading. Potentially could be used in this case as maybe a negative connotation, but compelling is more of an invitation into what's best for them. I like that because both words to me have a positive meaning, and it doesn't have the same. I've gotten some negative facial expressions when I talk about. I use the words manipulation and deception, but you're saying the same thing with words I think are a bit more approachable. I really like the way you word that and say that. I'm with you all the way on that.
Well, we all make decisions. You know, every day we're making buying decisions. We're making decisions to go right or go left. Yeah. You know, and I think it may be a good exercise to really self-reflect on the decisions you've made today or over the week. And you know, why did you make those decisions? Why did you buy this brand of cereal versus this? Why did you decide to purchase this vehicle over this one? Why did you decide to live in this neighborhood versus another? And start analyzing your own psychology and what's motivating your own decisions. And I think, you know, any successful marketer, especially when you're dealing with high-ticket items, like you mentioned, has that ability to get into the thought process of their prospect and almost become one with them. It's like they're using the Force, and you know, they completely understand their prospects' wants, needs, desires, and fears, and are meeting them completely on their level. You know, you're more like a shaman, you're a guide versus, you know, pushing your stuff onto them.
100%, I love it. It just kind of segues into my next point would be I never approach selling as an adversarial, like we're across the table or we're face to face. When I approach selling, I do it side by side. Yeah. Right? So I'm a solutions salesperson. I'm a consultant. So I'm consulting you on your bigger future. And it just so happens, if I have the solution, I'm going to recommend it to you. Mm-hmm. But if I don't have the solution, I'm going to find the right connection for you to get you to where your bigger future is regardless. Yeah. And what happens is that builds ultimate trust and rapport. Yeah. You know, if you go from convincing to compelling, you go from face to face to side by side. You mentioned sort of a shaman type of relationship. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a consultative advisor. So, you know, I've sold software to the White House. I've sold to the CIA, the FBI, World Bank, Homeland Security, big enterprise solutions to these organizations. Well, how do you build the trust and rapport that the White House is willing to trust you with their data? And I sold the White House their email archiving system, both to Bush and Obama. So what is it who do you have to become in order to sell where someone trusts you with this very important historical data to archive in your system? At that point, it's no longer even about the budget or the money they're going to spend. It's about, do I trust him and the story he's telling that we're willing to trust our data to this system? And so I did that by being a consultative advisor. It took about 6 months to a year to close that deal. The whole entire way I was consulting it. And then they just ended up buying me because I had the trust and rapport. Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier, it's important to go out and get face-to-face with people and discuss with them what it is they want, depending on what your business is. Get out there and have conversations so you can get the feedback, so you can be a better consultant. The more conversations you have, the more you'll hear the pains that are happening in your industry. The more you'll hear the desires that are out there in your industry, so you can go back and create a compelling story or a compelling product or service solution to address those needs.
Yeah, in a previous episode, we had Mike Bledsoe, who you've met from Barbell Shrugged, and we were talking about creating value, and their business models around information products where they do quite well. Well, the lead-in on those information products and the reason those are successful is because they provide huge value with this podcast that they've created and are touching 80,000 people plus a week with this podcast, providing great content, great advice, great guests, and they're building that rapport. I think too often especially young entrepreneurs where you're just concerned about cash flow and getting the deal done. It's all about wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You know, you're trying to just close a deal, close a deal. Well, look, there's nothing wrong with closing deals. Ultimately, that's what we're all here for, right? But sometimes you got to nurture a little bit. You got to massage it, you know. You got to provide value. You got to build trust. You got to build that rapport first. And then when it comes to asking for money, regardless of how much it is, that becomes a very easy proposition, because people's psychology is, well, Ian's provided so much value to me over the last 6 months in doing X, Y, and Z that, you know, how much more value am I going to get if I'm actually paying him for something? Right. You know?
Yeah, it's great. Well, and the thing I love about the podcast model, or this is where marketing becomes very important in building that trust and rapport, is it's also one to many, you know, versus one-on-one. If you're selling a product that's, you know, less expensive, for example, I'm in the skincare business. I launch skincare products online. One of the things I've done over the past year, to get into business with us, it was a minimum of $150,000. Now it's $300,000, raising to $500,000, and then soon raising to $1 million. So I'm always looking to raise prices, and you raise prices whenever you perform. But in the skincare business, I'm mass marketing. So I'm shipping out lots of products to lots of people. So instead of one-on-one, so if I'm selling software to a big organization, it may be a $300,000 or $3 million deal. It's worth the time and effort to spend 6 months or a year face-to-face developing rapport with the person. But if you're selling an $89 skincare solution, then you're going to mass market. So what I love about the podcast platform is that it's one to many. You can actually build relationships with people without having to know them or them really knowing you, or being anywhere. You can just build these relationships. Same thing with a sales letter. Same thing with a newsletter. Same thing with you know, videos on YouTube. Yeah. All of these are ways to build that trust and rapport, one to many. Even like a stage. You know, if you have an event once or twice a year, or even what you guys did recently at the CrossFit Games, like, you know, you're able to get to, you know, hundreds or thousands of people in a few-day period to reach out to them and have that sort of fit. Putting yourself in environments where you have that one-to-many, I think, is very powerful.
And it's interesting you mentioned, and we appreciate you coming down for the CrossFit Games and hanging out with us. And I had, you know, several of our team say, man, that Kevin guy, he's sharp. He gave me some great advice. Don't give him too much advice. We need some employees. We can't turn everybody into an entrepreneur here. But, you know, I had hundreds of people coming up to me, you know, at the games, you know, hundreds. You know, Aaron, oh, hey, thank you so much, this and that. Well, I hadn't met these people one-on-one, or, you know, not necessarily on a personal one-on-one level, but because of our marketing and our outreach and our consistent communication and stuff that we do in videos and email and phone calls, they feel like they know me, and they do know me. Yeah. They know a certain aspect. They know a certain aspect that you know, I have let public, and most of my stuff is pretty much an open book, so it's not like I'm scared that, you know, I am who I am. So, you know, what they know of me is me. It's probably one of the most transformative tools that we have available today, is this ability to go one to many instead of grinding it out one-on-one, which is the traditional model, you know, knocking on a door one at a time, or, you know, that type of thing. So, yeah, very good advice, good advice.
Yeah. Well, it's great because there's also the positioning aspect of it. You know, when you hear someone on the radio, when you see someone speak from stage, when you read someone's book, it gives them clout. It gives them expert positioning. Yeah. You know, I've given several talks from different stages around the world, really, and you know, after you give your talk, people are just in awe of you, and now they know you, and they know your story, and they want to get to know you more. So doing the mass marketing and direct mail, whether it's direct response online or even TV, you know, you get on TV, everyone, you know, knows you. And so it's a great positioning piece, too, to be able to be the authority and the leader in your industry. And that, of course, always builds the trust and rapport you want to have as well.
Yeah. I have a question about pricing and what you think is, you know, if you think there's a line that you have to draw to protect your customer or whatnot. So this is specific for a service business. And so this is, you know, I'm hoping that you can answer this, you know, ideally for the entrepreneur that's tuning into this podcast, they have a service business, and maybe they're confused. They're asking themselves, okay, my average customer, first-time customer, is going to be $25,000. I anticipate it's going to take me about 100 hours to really service this $25,000 project for them. And so they say, gosh, should I charge 25 grand and take the risk? Maybe I can do it in 60, 80 hours, but maybe I get screwed, it takes me 200 hours. Or should I just charge, you know, 250 bucks an hour? And it is what it is, and it's time and material. Now, the new model I've seen done at a lot of service companies is they're actually charging $25,000 as a project with a maximum of 100 hours in the contract, and saying anything over it is $250 an hour, which basically gives no protective element for the customer, only protects the service company, and the service company wins no matter what happens. So my question to you as a seasoned professional salesman, understanding all the complexities of what's going on in today's market, for the new bootstrapped entrepreneur starting a new thing or maybe starting another thing and he's doing a service business, what's your feedback on the pricing models and the best approach to take, being mindful of protecting your own business and serving the customer well?
Yes, great question. You know, I am in the results business. So, you know, the results speak for themselves. And if you understand the value of the results you're delivering, the hourly game altogether. Now, there are certain positions where you'll need to hire some people and put them on site if you're doing a consulting engagement. But, you know, and this is sort of where the testing comes into play. You know, if you're a new entrepreneur, you know, I had someone I was working with and I was consulting, and they were charging $1,000 for an assessment. And quickly, we raised the prices to about $25,000 a quarter for them, right? And one thing they started finding is, wow, there is an hourly piece where I might get caught in a trap here where I'll lose money. And what she did was she just built in another proposal for an hourly person for part of the project that was she was going to be unable to deliver, so she outsourced that piece to someone that was hourly. But her fee was still $25,000 a quarter. So I think, you know, as a new entrepreneur, you want to put yourself in a position where, and especially your first few clients, the result, like be focused on the result and make sure you're getting paid what you're worth. So, you know, if you're doing it hourly, I mean, that's okay too. It all depends on the business model. But I would say just really focus on results. And depending on what the business is, the results could be different. You know, if it's a sales type of position, the selling is going to be the results. So if you know your value and what you're really providing, and really if you can put a dollar figure to it, that's where you become very valuable. So if you not only know your own arithmetic, but you know your client's arithmetic, you can serve them much better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, knowing your value, but also knowing what the results value is to your customer. Meaning getting away from an hourly model, and this is where split testing could really come in handy. You know, it's like, well, I need X done in my business, you know, and if X gets done, I know that's going to generate, you know, Y in sales and revenue and profit for my business. What am I willing to pay to get X done? Am I willing to pay $100 an hour? Am I willing to pay 10 grand? Am I willing to pay 100 grand? Maybe I'm willing to pay 100 grand, but someone's selling me at 10. They're leaving 90 on the table potentially. So unless you're continually testing your pricing model and seeing what the market is willing to bear, you don't know where that ceiling is. I mean, when you were doing work and doing work with Joe, maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, selling a $25,000 membership to the Genius Mastermind or 25K group. I mean, for a lot of people, you know, at home right now, maybe go, holy cow, $25,000 to join a group? Are you insane? Yet, you know, you're able to help facilitate growing this group in what, doubling or tripling in size.
Aaron, did Kevin sell you the $25,000 membership?
He sold me on 100K. I'm on the waiting list.
Yeah. You know, here's what's interesting. The people who are like, wow, I wouldn't spend $25,000, they're not the people I would be speaking to.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Like, so this is the Ferrari versus the Honda.
Right.
Right? Because I want to speak to people. So here's what I did as a marketing campaign for Joe about a couple years ago. And I I did a LinkedIn campaign where I knew exactly who the typical member would be. It's someone who identified themselves as entrepreneur, executive, founder, CEO. You know, one of these identified themselves as something like this, and they were already in some sort of mastermind group. In other words, they understood the value of a mastermind. So if someone is like, let's say, the personal training business, like you don't want to have to go out there and convince someone that personal trainers are the best way to go. The best person to sell to is someone who's already hired a personal trainer and gotten results.
Right.
Good point. The best person to sell a Ferrari to is either a Lamborghini buyer or a Ferrari buyer. Right. Like someone who's already spending $250,000 plus for a car. Yeah. So I wanted to identify people who called themselves CEO, entrepreneur, founder, principal, one of these titles, and also was currently participating in something like a YPO, an EO, a Vistage, a strategic coach, a Tony Robbins Platinum program, or a GKIC, Glacier Kennedy Inner Circle, one of these types of groups. If they weren't already spending a lot of money for their own community, I didn't want to talk to them, right? And the way I would distinguish Joe's group from others' groups, you know, I talk about putting powerful language around what it is you're selling. I would say, if you're familiar with YPO, EO, and Vistage, they're sort of the Army, Navy, Air Force of groups. They're global, they're big, you know, you become one of many. Like if you join Joe's group, the 25K group is like the Navy SEALs. It's an elite group of entrepreneurs. And so everyone understands the difference between the Army and the Navy SEALs, or the Navy and the Navy SEAls, right? It's an elite group. And so using that language, it was very easy for people to, not easy, it still takes a conversation, to cut a check for $25,000. Now in Joe's group, it was specific to people who wanted to understand marketing better too. So a lot of information marketers, a lot of guru type businesses, you know, people who were growing their business and needed connections, strategies, and community. And so yeah, you know, when I started doing work with Joe, there's about 62 members. I think there's about 150 now, actually more than that now. And I haven't been doing a whole lot of work with Joe the last year, but 2 years ago I was doing quite a bit of work with him. So we grew that group pretty substantially. And so a $25,000 check wasn't a big deal because people were already spending checks. You know, 25, 30. If you're doing Tony Robbins group, you're spending $100K a year.
So one question is that getting easier and easier to do, and is that a concern for someone like Joe with his mastermind group? I mean, is it going to get easier for the next young, you know, hyper-connected Joe Polish to come in and basically just type in, you know, the YouTube page for the mastermind group and the LinkedIn group and basically start poaching the same people? Is that becoming easier, and is that a concern for guys that have groups? Or is that still just as difficult as it always has been in building those relationships and gaining an audience with these right buyers for a high ticket, you know, type of thing, that what the mastermind groups are?
Well, you know, I think it goes back to building that trust and rapport with people and then delivering value, right? So, you know, people that join Joe's group or the 25K group, they get a significant amount of value. And if you continue to deliver value, people will just continue to come. Right. People will continue to stay. You know, so there's always an attrition rate. People fall off, and listen, 25K group isn't right for everyone. You know, an executive of a you know, multi-million-dollar company selling skincare may not be the right place for him. He may find more value elsewhere. But when you know, this is very important, as I was saying earlier, get out there and speak to people so you can start to define who your target market is. Like really get your target market. And so for Joe, for 25K group, there is a specific target market where there's no better group in the world than that group. And it's as simple as that. And for EO, YPO, all these other groups, same thing. Tony Robbins Mastery Program, same thing. So it's like really knowing your niche and communicating with that niche. You know, and letting other people on the outside, aspirational group too. It's like one day I'll be in that group. Right? I had a guy call me recently. He joined. I talked to him 3 years ago. And he called me, hey, Kev, I'm ready. Here's my credit card. You know, he signed up, so he just recently signed up. And it was awesome. So he aspired to be in the group. And so when you're running that kind of group with these really high-level people, you know, you're able to constantly have people join the group. And so as far as poaching goes, I mean, I don't even really... See, I said earlier, I don't believe in competition. Yeah. I've never found there to be competition in the environment I've been in. because I know that if I deliver extraordinary value, my competition becomes irrelevant.
I was going to say, especially on a, you know, if you're joining a group, the last thing you want to do is join a group whose leader is coming from a scarcity model. I mean, you know, when I was a chiropractor and had a very successful referral-based practice for 10 years, you know, there were other offices that would pop up in town all the time, and people, oh, are you worried about so-and-so down the street? I'm like, worried? Heck no. I'm going to attract who I'm going to attract because of my skill set, my personality, the way I do things. You know, I don't want to attract who I'm not supposed to attract. You know, let them go over there. So, you know, not being afraid to turn people away and say no. And I think this ties great with the beginning of the conversation, you know, having that confidence to, you know, go after a certain type of clientele, to charge what you feel is your value proposition, what you feel just, you know, a price that you can justify based on the services and the needs that you're meeting for those customers, and doing a great job. Because look, there's all this front end stuff, and yeah, we can have a lot of, you know, slick sales tactics and marketing and smoke and mirrors, but if you're not at the end of the day delivering, then you're going to be in a pure attrition business where you're turn and burn. You get people in, and then it's a revolving door. We all know as business owners, the best business to be in is the referral business, where you're doing such a good job you don't even have to market anymore. You're doing internal marketing, not external, because you're doing such a kick-ass job that, you know, the floodgates are open and your people are your evangelizers, and they're bringing their friends in who are like-minded, which are the same people you want to attract anyway.
That's great. It's really great. And there's something to be said about finding leverage points. So, you know, once I did a deal with the White House, well, every other federal agency said if the White House trusts you, we'll do business with you too. All right? So finding sort of the tipping, you know, matter of fact, I used to get calls from the different FBI field offices because we had done a deal with the FBI years earlier, and the field offices would call me and say, hey, headquarters told me to call you. You know, and I said, well, what do you have? So I became a consultant, and I would get tons of referral business because I had proven myself to be the best in the business. And so there's also a certain level of confidence that you must have, right? Like it's almost you almost have to be a bit pompous that I'm the best in the world at what I do, and I'm a stand. My price means something, right? Like, we're not going to discount the 25K group. Why the hell would we? Like, as a matter of fact, we're going to raise the prices, right? Because it's that much value is being delivered. So if you really know your worth, like you really get the fact that you're the best in the business. Like when I would walk in, no, I don't care where I walk into. If I walk into a lunch, if I walk into a meeting, I walk into a presentation, for a fact that I'm the absolute best person on the planet to be speaking to the people about what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't, I wouldn't be there, right? So when you become the best in the business, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about being obligated to sell. Like, I'm the best in the world at what I'm doing, and since we're in conversation together, you should be buying from me, right? Because it's the best in the world, right? And when you come from that place, like there's a level of confidence where then you won't discount. See, I don't believe in discounting ever, right? I believe in raising prices, not taking prices down. But you have to believe that you're worth it. Like a Ferrari dealer, just to go back to that analogy, they know that their cars are the best in the world. I mean, people walk around wearing the freaking T-shirts and the hats, you know, the socks, and the you know, put the stickers everywhere and posters. You know it's the best in the world. So you're not going to haggle with the price. Why would you? Are you kidding me? It's got 1,200, right? And so, I think doing that and then finding the leverage points within your industry. You know, just since we're on the 25K group, Joe Polish is one of the best in the world at this in particular, leveraging certain people like Richard Branson, like Ariana Huffington, like Steve Forbes, and Peter Diamandis. Joe knows how to add value to these people's lives, invite them into his community, and then leverage all of their relationships. Right? So if you could figure out you can sell twice as much or 10 times as much if you find that tipping point, right? If you're let's go back to the fitness industry. If you're a personal trainer, well, you know, you can go start your personal training business, or you can go partner with 24 Hour Fitness, right? and think strategically. Hey, I'm not just going to be a one-man show. I'm going to go global with this. And of course, you have to start somewhere. But like constantly thinking strategically, who can I partner with?
Right.
Where I can get the best leverage point for my.
Where you can leapfrog.
Yeah.
Which leads us in. We're gonna do another podcast on basically leapfrog techniques and that type of thing.
Right.
But listen, Kev, we really appreciate you taking the time today. If people want to hire you for consulting, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to check out one of your products, why don't you tell us what the best place to do that is?
Yeah, best place is to go to executivesalessource.com. That's executivesalessource.com. And they can just check out what I do there, or they can email me at kevin@executivesalessource.com. And, you know, what I do is I'll engage with people on consulting engagements. I'll help them raise their prices. Sometimes, if it's a right fit, I'll even outsource a high-level sales team. And what I do is I focus on high-ticket items. You know, 25,000 is a minimum. Typically 100,000 or more. So I do a lot of work with software companies, consulting companies, and these types of businesses. So, you know, my interest is going in and then, you know, providing results, working on a long-term relationship.
What if somebody traditionally is in a service company, they do 5- and 6-figure sales on a regular basis that are projects, and they run into one or more opportunities that are going to be like a 7- 8-figure sale. And they think to themselves, you know what, I can do anything I put my mind to, but maybe I'm a little out of my element here. Would that be a good time for someone to reach out to you and start a conversation and say, hey, listen, I'm kind of like in my comfort zone in the 5- 6-figure sales range. Like I'll sign that contract and, you know, first call close, but I got this 8-figure opportunity and I'm just kind of wondering maybe I'm going to screw it up because I don't have the right person to coach me through or help me do it or do it with me and for me. Is that the type of thing that you'd like to get a phone call like that from an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's great. That's perfect, because here's the thing is most people don't understand their own value. Like we have these sort of humble limitations, most of us anyway, where we're like, oh, I don't know if I'm worth it, I don't know. What I do is I break through all that nonsense, you know, and I go in and we just raise prices. Absolutely. And I put the conversation around it in a powerful language, and sometimes I even step in as the representative. Because it's just like, you know, a football player signing a multi-million-dollar contract. You know, what does he have? He has an agent representing him so he can get that deal done, because it's just not his forte. He's just not good at it. He doesn't want to be good at it. He wants to be a wide receiver, or he wants to be a quarterback. So yeah, I oftentimes will take on sort of an agent-type relationship, where if it's a big enough deal, I'll come in and have that conversation, close it, because that also creates sort of a buffer between the person who's the business owner and the person who's buying from them, which actually creates what I call something executive bridging. So instead of them, like, it's hard for us to brag about ourselves.
Yeah.
Culturally, it's hard, but when you have someone else positioning you, you can actually show up like a superhero.
Yeah.
You know, like when I talk about Joe Polish, I'm like, this guy's one of the best, he's the most extraordinary entrepreneur on the planet. He went from cleaning, you know, one of the best American success stories, went from cleaning dog piss out of carpets to running private masterminds on Richard Branson's island. Like, Joe wouldn't even know that story about himself. I mean, he does, but he can't tell it the way I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a company that needs a more powerful story told, that's really where I make a major difference. And it's, you know, and I also find what I call invisible impact. Too often we're like counting time, or we're trading time for money, and we don't even realize the invisible impact we're leaving behind. You know, like for example, like when I worked for this business called Xylab out of Washington, D.C., we raised the prices from about $2,500 per unit to we were selling deals for $250,000, right? That not only changed the pricing while I was there, but that changed the pricing forever, right? So oftentimes we don't even know the impact that we leave behind.
Well, Kev, man, it's been a pleasure. Always fun to catch up and make sure, you know, we got to get together sooner than later. Just to end on that sports analogy, Agent, can you end with like a show me the money? There we go.
There's the money. There's the money.
Brother.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. All right.
Great.
Later. Take care.